You can get a helping hand.
Because we're so tethered to the remote environment, because we're so tethered to Zoom calls and Google Meets and Discord chats, I think it's important to talk about connecting through the camera. It's not something that a lot of people have a lot of experience with, but there is a psychological trigger that happens when you speak directly to a person. And it's not something that we often can do. A lot of times, and this is really something I think is fascinating. I think it's fascinating. We talk about building products and making them trustworthy all the time. And yet, it's very difficult for us to connect with people when we speak. A lot of times we want to look away, or we want to kind of move around the room. We're trained to do that when we present. When we present in person, we're trained to move around the room, talk to different people, try to connect, right? But the ability to speak into one camera that then has you speaking directly back to a wave of people individually on their own screens, that's new. That's something unique. Now, it's not new from the perspective of television, for instance. They've had that capability forever. The ability to look directly into the camera and speak to the people and connect. That's been something that has always been there. But we've used it sparingly. We've used it sparingly because I think there's something slightly disconcerting about somebody being able to stare into your soul. However, there's a story out on Fast Company this morning that speaks about the effectiveness of the Democratic National Convention. I'm sure the Republicans are going to do the same thing. They're smart people. Everybody's got smart strategists on their team. What they found was there's a psychological trigger about trustworthiness when somebody speaks directly to you. So, of course, the entire convention was set up with speakers speaking directly to you. And this got me thinking about how we tend to interview. And the fact that each of you, if you're presenting to, I said interview, but really it's any sort of presentation. If you're presenting to an internal team or if you're interviewing for a new job, you're likely, for the foreseeable future, going to be doing it through a medium like this. And what that means is that you need to get really comfortable with being able to stare into a camera and speak directly to the person on the other side, calmly, clearly, and be comfortable with the way that you look on the other side of that camera. And a lot of us aren't. I just want to own that right away. When I talk to students on the daily, I see a lot of shifting. It's a lot of, not quite comfortable with that camera pointing back at them. And I know firsthand. My daughter's suspicious of all of those electronic devices and recordings and all that stuff. So I get it. But if you're going to put your best foot forward during that presentation, during that interview, you need to get comfortable with the camera. And that's something that we really I haven't really coached people on that, because up to this point, when you go in for an interview, you typically go in for the interview. And once you're in a room, it's different. Nobody stares directly at one another. But Zoom and the Zoom world that we live in now has altered engagement. And that's when people talk about Zoom fatigue, what they're talking about is the tiredness that kicks in after you've been engaging directly into a camera for a meeting. Because unlike the past where people weren't quite so focused on whether you kind of were off or maybe you were like looking down, writing something. Now they pay attention to that. Now because everybody's on camera. Okay? And it also means that if you're the type that likes to shut your camera off, or and I've had students that for all sorts of reasons did not want to have their camera on. Okay? That's going to put you at a disadvantage when it comes to interviewing. So I saw that article. I'll link to it because I'm going to break this apart. I'm going to break this apart from the regular recording, and I will link to it in the recording so that you can go read it. I think it's worth a read, and I'm not trying to push Democrat or Republican agenda. I think it's just really interesting how political parties are leveraging a psychological trait that could benefit you when you're out there trying to communicate with your teams, when you're trying to communicate with potential employers.
Planning, moving up like this.